Playing video games in VR is pretty cool. Never has humanity had such an interactive and immersive relationship with technology, and never before have we been able to be this far inside of our own video games. For better or for worse.
Sometimes smell is really bad.
Add that to the fact that every movie, TV show, and book has been hyping up VR to be cool as shit for decades, plus the ability to hit virtual 360 goon snipes, and you'd think that everybody in the world would be a VR gamer. But this crazy future technology hasn't really stuck yet. Instead, headset sales are stalling, companies investing in VR gaming have lost billions of dollars, and the market is still too small for AAA developers to really turn a profit. So as someone who loves this stuff to death, low-key to the detriment of everyone around me, I wanted to explore the core issues with this incredible medium, and why it feels like it's been slowly rotting. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. VR hardware has come extremely far in a very short period of time, but not without struggle. The first big virtual reality hardware attempts were rejected by consumers for sucking complete dick, and a lot of companies worked and died in the background trying to refine this technology. Where it happens to be today, though, is pretty incredible. Quality standalone VR headsets are available for less than the average cost of a traditional console, and PC VR has limitless potential. Both main hardware types are designed to be consumer accessible, with intuitive controllers and minimal setup. These headsets are also capable of some pretty insane shit now, with pristine graphics, all-encompassing FOVs, finger tracking, surround sound, and even more bells and whistles that I just don't have time to talk about. With a band, you can deadass be playing VR chat with full body haptic detection, which I don't think is a good thing for anybody, but you can do it, and it is consumer accessible, high technology hardware. That's all really to say that headsets have been getting better, but, and this is really important, they haven't necessarily been getting smaller. A quick history lesson. The widespread adoption of computers, especially consumer-grade computers, directly correlated with their decrease in size and bulkiness. And, as I've tested out on my grandfather and friends, nobody likes wearing a big fucking dome on their head. It freaks them out, which makes sense. In general, even though headsets have gotten a lot better, there's still a fundamental accessibility issue that needs to be addressed by manufacturers. A 2024 market study by GitNux reported that 25 to 40% of people, and with other studies suggesting up to 70% of all people who use VR headsets experience motion sickness. More confusingly, apparently as high as 80% of women experience motion sickness when using VR, according to PC Gamer. I'm not making that up, just you can actually look that up. I guess just do whatever with that information. I don't really know what to do with that. Now I'm just spitballing here, but I think that part of that is due to having to whip a heavy VR mechanism around on your head. There are other issues that play into this too though, like latency, unnatural locomotion, and buffering. VR is one big simulation that tries to trick your brain into processing motion that isn't happening, and anything that confuses your eyes and especially ears sort of fucks with it. The Steam frame looks to be tackling size and a lot of these other core issues in a lightweight, responsive format. Until it or another headset like it sees widespread adoption though, VR gaming hardware is still holding the medium back a little bit. It's just too tall of a hurdle to climb for a lot of users. However, that's not nearly as big a deal as the huge, gaping, dry hole in software. Over the last decade or so, some fantastic virtual reality games have come out, and some of them are my favorite games of all time, VR or not. The problem is that these spectacular games are very few and far in between, and even fewer of them really display VR's potential as a medium. Especially recently too, it feels like there's been a drought in great new titles. It's like if the PS3 had no game shit from a million years ago was applicable to an entirely new form of entertainment. Unfortunately, the reason behind this is simple and sound. VR titles are more difficult to develop than traditional games, and will also more than likely make less money. Therefore, who the fuck would want to make a VR game? For reference, the highest selling VR game on Steam is Life Alyx, with around 60,000 Steam reviews. Fantastic game, one of the best VR games ever created, and a great addition to a world-famous series. Stay tuned for the Life Alyx retrospective. Schedule 1, pretty fun game with no series backing, indie hit, has 173,000 Steam reviews. I know it's cheaper, but that's still unbelievable. This random-ass indie success has almost triple the reviews of what is essentially Half-Life 3. What I'm getting at is that the consumer base for VR just isn't big enough yet to really warrant AAA or otherwise big investments into killer apps. There have been incredible indie and small studio games that have stepped up to bat, and thank God for it, But aside from Alyx and Boneworks, there is no Wii Sports or Halo or even a BioShock for VR yet. Companies don't see it worth the trouble until the market grows bigger, but the market won't grow bigger until games like that get made. It's a vicious cycle that won't end until someone with infinite money pulls a Valve and leaves it all on the field for a true killer app, like Valve. Or if some serious money starts getting pumped into VR development teams and VR dev startups. Not even Facebook could figure it out. Mark Zuckerberg was too busy smoking meats with Baby Rays to make a good game. Fucking dumbass lost $500 billion on Horizon Worlds. That shit was trash, no wonder. There are other routes out of the cycle too though, mostly focused on making VR development easier for the common homie. Unity has taken a lot of incredible strides over the last few years in making VR development accessible, so much so that they even have a URP template specifically for VR controllers. Stress Level Zero is also working on their whole Marrow thing, an easy to work with and hope to god eventually licensable engine that'll give VR devs the tools they need to get shit done. Hopefully sort of like the Creation Engine or Source back in the day. These tools will help indie devs get even better at what they do and introduce new indie devs to the scene. And if games like Vertigo 2 can exist being made by one fucking guy, I'm really not all that worried. Still, the stagnation in recent big releases and the causes behind it are concerning, and if not paid attention to, may keep the industry in its current state for a long time. Ideally, over the next few years, a string of great games come out in tandem with increasingly lightweight hardware, leading to an overall increase in sales. Alright, let's talk money. CNBC reported a 40% drop in VR headset sales from 2022 to 2023, about 1.1 billion down to 664 million. A Counterpoint research study shows a 17% decline in headset sales year over year as of Q3 2025. The Meta Reality Labs unit has lost well over $25 billion since the start of 2022, and since those are the guys that make the headsets and claim to be working on the killer apps and have all the money, that's not good. But I don't think that this means VR as a whole is dying. I think, more so, it indicates that it's balancing out. Around COVID, there was a gigantic bubble that formed around the Quest 2 launch, and I think we're seeing it shrink and the VR industry slowly become revalued to a reasonable extent. The Quest 2 was the biggest thing to ever happen to VR to this day, but as that novelty slowly wore off, that user base slowly dried up. But new game-changing hardware is on the horizon, and I'm confident it will bring with it new incredible games and new dedicated users. Every market forecast in the world still thinks VR is going to be fucking gigantic in a few years, and I completely agree. More important than any metric, number, or forecast, though, is you. What really matters is whether or not you, the average consumer, finds it worth your time and money to follow the evolution of virtual reality. If you don't, that's totally understandable. If you do, personally, I think you're in for a hell of a ride. Is VR the future of gaming? As of right now, It's not as dramatic or clear a jump for the industry as 2D to 3D, for example, and there are a lot of problems which we just talked about to be worked out. But do I think it's dying? No. Fuck no. No way. In a few years, or hell, maybe even in a few months, this entire thing could be flipped on its head. That's where the excitement lies in these new technologies. The unpredictability. Whether VR evolves to become the future of gaming and break its stagnation is uncertain. But one thing is clear. I'll be watching very closely, and hopefully someday contributing to that evolution with endless curiosity. And I hope all of you guys do too.